Hello everyone, it's me again and I'm back with another video. So I wanted to comment on this article that I came across in the New York Post and a few other news sites about Brandeis, I don't know how you say it, University and their naughty words or naughty terms list, especially given that I work in a university and I actually have seen these type of lists before in my place of work. Right, it's been a few years, but I do remember seeing flyers or whatnots that were um, listing certain terms like calling a spade, or a white lie, listing terms like that, and saying that you could choose, you know, different language because of the uh, color issue in those terms, right? And I will. But here's the thing: I agree with being mindful of one's language, especially if you are working in a school, you're working anywhere, you have to be a professional. And certainly if you're working in a place where people of different cultures and whatnot are interacting, yeah, I do think you should be mindful of the language you use because people of different cultures, certain words, certain terms can have different connotations, right? For one simple example, right? In the US, you can talk about, buying a pair of pants, right? Pants are just, those long things that cover your legs. If you say pants, or you want to go buy a pair of pants and say, England, right? You're probably going to get funny looks because to them, pants means underwear, right? So I certainly do think that when you're in an environment where you do have so many different people of different cultures and cultural norms and a high chance for a clash, you should be mindful of certain terms that you use, especially if, for example, you're aware of the fact that the person you're speaking to maybe is not a native English speaker, right? Or they're not familiar with American English and American idioms and things like that. But there's a difference between being mindful and then being positively silly, which is what I think this particular long list that Brandeis University has falls into. Because I've looked over this list, I'm going to address a few of the phrases in each box. But what this, what these, what's labeled oppressive language or whatnot, this whole thing that they're doing, trying to label some words or some phrases as problematic and others as not, first of all, overlooks the other terms that could be used to describe something that could be considered more offensive, and I'll get to that later. But it also sort of, how do I put this? It also does not take into account things like content, context, nuance. And content and context and nuance is essential for communication, right? So we understand each other. Take, for example, in this first one here, right? It says that killing it is oppressive language. And it says here that a possible alternative is great job or awesome, right? The explanation given why you should say great job or awesome instead of killing it, right, is it says here, if someone is doing well, we don't need to equate that to murder. Here's the problem with that explanation. That explanation makes no sense. Most people who use the term killing it use it in a positive way. They acknowledge you here, great job, awesome. Those are affirmative statements, right? If someone says, you're killing it, man, they are being hyperbolic. They are exaggerating for effect. Same way if, for example, I say, man, I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. It doesn't mean that I literally want horse meat or want to literally hunt down a horse, kill it, and eat it. No. It's an expression meaning that I am very hungry. It is exaggeration and hyperbole for effect to get the point across. It makes language lively. And guess what? A lot of language, a lot of terms, even a lot of hand gestures, right, can mean something fairly mundane but have a fairly violent connotation. For example, right? Oh God, this is This is killing me. Sitting through this meeting is killing me. You're not literally dying, you're bored. People understand this. They understand that you are not being literal. If somebody pantomimes pointing a gun to their head because they're bored or annoyed, it doesn't literally mean that they're suicidal or that they want to be shot. This is what annoys me about these type of lists, even when I saw it in my own workplace, because it takes all sort of nuance and content and context out of the terms and just out of human speech and communication. For example, if I say, hey, you know what, let that person be. If you give a man enough rope, he will hang himself with it. It's not advocating for actual hanging. It's saying that if you let someone who's doing something stupid keep doing something stupid, eventually they will trip themselves up and make a fool of themselves. So let them be. Let them continue uninterrupted, right? But under this, such a term would now be considered problematic because of the connotation of hanging and lynching and all that, although it has nothing to do uh, with it. But now, because of the casual association, some people, not all people, some people would come to about it. Now it would be a problematic phrase. But here's what I find interesting. It says here that killing it is oppressive language because of if someone's doing well, you don't have to equate it to murder. Well, then what about terms like slay, such as in Yas Queen Slay? I don't see the word slay listed here. It's not under the word killing or killing it. So is that permissible? Is that permissible because it's a phrase typically heard in drag culture? And this is Pride Month? That's another thing. For all the stuff that they ban, I see more stuff that could probably be more problematic, but they don't ban that. So that's interesting. Right, and they have more things here such as take a shot at, take a stab at, and they say an alternative is give it a go or try, and they say, well, these expressions needlessly use imagery of hurting someone or something. Taking a shot can also mean, to drink something, right? It's like think. And now, of course, the term trigger warning now needs a trigger warning, saying that the word trigger has connotations to guns. Well, what about this? What about if someone is described as having a hair trigger temper, right? Usually meaning short tempered. The whole point of the term trigger warning was to inform people that a certain topic that might be discussed or depicted or whatever could be triggering to them if they have suffered a specific trauma. If they have been, for example, the victim of a crime or they've been to war, right? But these things have now reached their logical extremes. They've totally just jumped beyond the shark, right? And now we get lists that are, in my opinion, made by overly sensitive individuals who don't understand how conversation works in between two human individuals. If I say, man, you are killing it, it doesn't automatically mean that I intend violence toward somebody. Right? But let's look at some more here. Let's look at some more. Right? It says here you can't use the term, or you shouldn't use the term picnic anymore, and that you should use the more neutral outdoor eating, which will then somehow become a problem. And it says here that the term picnic is often associated with lynchings of black people and whatnot. I've never heard that explanation. I've heard of maybe picnic or picnicking or picking cotton. But I've never heard of this association with picnic, so I'm not sure this is accurate, but even if it is, guess what? When most people talk about a picnic, what they think about is, taking a nice spring day, sitting in a park, on a towel or something, having like a a romantic day date, more or less, right? Or like a family thing with like a picnic basket, and you have sandwiches and you have apple pie and all this other stuff, right? It's usually this very sweet, sort of innocent, romantic imagery around it, right? Or family spending time together, right? Very wholesome. Guess what, person or people who wrote this? Even terms that are very dark, right? Their meanings change over time, and they can become wholesome, and vice versa, right? But then it has here, go off the reservation. I've literally never heard of this. I've literally never heard this. But it would not surprise me if they now got upset over the term, like, to make a reservation, right? Oh, you're associating it with Native Americans. No, I'm trying to save a seat at my restaurant, at my favorite restaurant. That's what I'm trying to do, right? But let's continue, right? But now they say here, first person language, right? So they have victim, survivor. Well, first of all, Beyonce's just lost a hit song, right? Because she has a song called Survivor, which was actually about overcoming, right? I'm a survivor. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to work harder. So that was actually about perseverance and doing better. But now she has to get rid of that title, change the title to, I guess, person who has experienced. Because apparently you cannot survive something. You cannot be a survivor with pride, according to this university, right? You cannot go from being a victim, right? Someone who has experienced something horrific unjustly, and go to a survivor, someone who has overcome that, who has lived through it. Apparently now you cannot find empowerment in that. Now it's considered oppressive language, right? And then we have disabled person and wheelchair bound. And they want to replace this with person with a disability, person who uses a wheelchair. What's the difference? What's the What is the difference except more words? Like, the point of wheelchair bound is to describe someone who uses a wheelchair, right? You want me to use more words? You want me to use what? 4, 5, 6 words to describe something that is already implied with a 2-word definition, or a 2-word phrase? And then we have mentally ill, person living with a mental condition, which is mentally ill. Then we have, child prostitute, sex with an underage person, child who has been trafficked, rape. Okay, but not every child is a victim. Not every child prostitute is a victim of necessarily sex trafficking. Number one, or human trafficking. There are many different reasons why a child might become a victim of that. That has nothing to do with trafficking. You would need to know the circumstances of the case to determine that. And then they now consider the phrase or the term non-consensual sex, and now they just say to call it rape. Well, here's the thing. The FBI, to my understanding, actually has very strict definitions legally for rape, which is why typically when a rape is described, say in the news, they refer to it as a sexual assault, because legally speaking, they don't know yet if it fits the legal category of rape. It's actually very, very, very narrow, which is why the term sexual assault is typically used, because it's broader in scope. At least that's my understanding of it. Right, and then it says here, abusive relationships, right? A relationship with an abuser. But here's the thing: a person can have an abusive relationship with things that are not other people, like an abusive relationship with food or alcohol or drugs. Right, and then it has addict, homeless person, prostitute, person who engages in sex work. Well, here's the thing: if prostitute is bad, then what about terms such as slut, whore, hussy, thought? What about terms like that? Because guess what? You ban one, people will just come up with and use five others, right? So you can't call a sex worker a prostitute, but you can call her a whore, right? Is that what you're trying to say? And then we have identity-based language, right? So we have uh, to get rid of gender-exclusive language like you guys. Except you guys is not gender exclusive. The whole point is that you are addressing a group. Just because it happens to use the masculine term of guys does not mean that it is oppressive, nor does it necessarily mean it is referring to all men. It is understood that when you say you guys, you're speaking to a group that may or may not be uh, mixed, right? It may or may not be a intergender group. And now it says you can't use the terms ladies and gentlemen, or that these are oppressive terms, oppressive language. Now we should use y'all, folks, friends, loved ones, people, which we already do. Then it says these examples either lump people under masculine language, yeah, and I see no problem with this, or within the gender binary man or woman, which doesn't include everyone. Even the terms trans man or trans male and trans female or trans woman fall into the gender binary. Can we stop with this? Right, then we have, policemen, congressmen, and they say, well, to use the neutral police officer, congressperson. We're already doing that. What about policewoman? Is it wrong now to refer to an actual female officer, to a female cop, as a policewoman? What about the old 70s TV show Policewoman? This makes no sense to me. Now, of course, we have to get rid of the term freshman, or the term freshman is now oppressive language because it is by definition masculine because it has the word man in it. How about fresh human? Is that good? Is that enough? And then it says she and he, and then it says to ask their pronouns. Unless you give me a reason to, as in, I cannot determine your identity by looking at you. No, I'm not going to ask your pronouns. And I speak as somebody who is routinely misgendered because of my name and or my voice. And having a short masculine haircut doesn't help matters. But I'm not asking, generally speaking, I'm not asking for a person's pronouns. If you tell me what they are, I'll do my best to respect them. But I'm not going to walk up to every person and go, hello, John, who looks totally like a guy and who identifies as male. What are your pronouns? I'm not doing that. And then it says, oppressive language now is African American, and that it should be replaced with the word black. Not all black people are from Africa and or America. This is indeed true, but that does not necessarily mean that the term needs to go away. Let those who want to use it use it. I have been called to and identified as both. I don't care. I find them as interchangeable. Then it has, ableist language such as such as crazy, wild, insane, lame, walk-in, right? Well, here's the thing. The whole point of walk-in is to imply that you don't have to make an appointment, that you can just walk in, that you can just arrive unannounced and be seen. What do you want them to say? I don't understand this. Here's what I find funny, right? The crazy, wild, insane, right? Uncool, disappointing. Here's the thing: you take away crazy, wild, and insane, and you know what people are going to do? They're going to default to other terms. Like take for example, right? I'm going to use it when I was in high school in the late '90s, early 2000s. A certain word was very popular. A certain three-letter word was very popular to describe anything that was considered uncool. You know what that word was? It was gay. That was the term. Anything that was considered uncool was called gay. If you were uncool, you were called gay. Now, of course, no one actually cared about your sexual orientation, but it was simply a stupid label to say this is uncool. So if you take away the word lame, or you take away, crazy, wild, or whatever, guess what? People will just start using even more offensive terms, like an actual sexual orientation to imply something negative. Is that what you want? Because that's exactly what's going to happen. And then it says generic people of color. Yeah, I think that phrase should go because it's just saying colored people with an extra word. But now it says you should use BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, because it intentionally names black people. Yeah, but here's the thing. For example, Asians are considered people of color, yet they're not mentioned in this, right? So do we now need a new term, right? If you are talking about a specific racial group, then name the group you are talking about. But what if it would be considered bad taste to actually name the group again? There's no content, no context, no nuance to any of these changes, right? And then we have terms they claim that are oppressive, like tribe and powwow, because of the association with, as they say here, indigenous peoples, as if other peoples, right, don't come from tribes, right, or don't have tribal cultures, right. How about this? Would you like us to use the word clan? Clan is a group, it's a family. Oh, wait a minute. That word could possibly have a bad connotation with a certain white supremacist group that tends to repeat the letter K 3 times over. Oh no, we can't do that. We can't do that. Oh, what should we do? Then again, powwow, that's a spirit animal. Oh, this is just so silly. Now apparently the term spirit animal is oppressive. How is that oppressive? How? Now it's favorite animal I would most like to be. That's literally why people say spirit animal, right? This animal speaks to me. It speaks to my spirit. It speaks to who I am. If I were an animal, this is the animal I would be. That's why the term exists. So you don't have to use so many words. Okay, and again, I bet even Native Americans who are animist, right, understand that when people say spirit animal, they're not literally talking about animals and spirits. Plus, you assume that it's only Native Americans. There's a lot of Japanese lore that has animals turning into people and stuff like that. Foxes, for example, tend to have that association of changing shape and everything. So why are you automatically associating it with just Native Americans, right? But anyway, now it says language that doesn't say what we mean, right? Do you really want me to say what I mean? I'm not sure you would like it. Then it says here, oppressive language is everything going on right now. Apparently, because this is not specific, right? It's just sort of lumps everything together. And it says that the possible alternatives are, COVID, BLM protests, stuff like that. Being vague about important issues risk miscommunication and can also avoid accountability. Or maybe someone's actually trying to be sensitive to another person's feelings and is trying to get the point across without having to directly state it. There is this thing called subtlety and nuance. And then we have apparently the terms committed suicide, failed, successful suicide, completed suicide, or oppressive. And that terms that should be used are died by suicide, suicided, killed themselves, which I think we already use. And then it says These verbs frame suicide as a crime committed. Well, the term committed can also mean to be like, you know, committed involuntarily to like a mental institution, right? Or an achievement fails, successful, completed, implying judgment about suicidality. Well, what about then if somebody attempts suicide, which, objectively speaking, is someone trying to take their own lives, but failing to do so? What do you call that? Do you still refer to it as an attempted suicide? Or do we now need a longer term to describe the same thing? And then it says here child prostitutes, sex with, I think this was already addressed, right? Abusive relationships, and again, victim and survivor, already addressed that uh, previously, right? So again, it's like, and again, I've actually seen this in my own workplace. Granted, it's been a few years, and nobody really paid attention to that list at the time, but it is very concerning because it really does put a stranglehold. Yes, I'm using certain terms for a reason. It really does put a stranglehold on what you can say and what and how you can express yourself. And especially for creatives like singers or writers, right? Where you need words and you need the power of words, if that makes any sense, to be able to paint a picture, right? To be able to describe something, right? So many of these terms are descriptive, right? In some fashion. That's the power and the beauty of words, right? For example, if I refer to something as a stranglehold, you understand that I'm not literally talking about strangling somebody or putting a neck lock on them. You understand what I'm saying is that it chokes your ability to express yourself, right? Because language is descriptive. It paints certain images in your mind. It gives power and weight to what you are saying. And when you have political correctness that has gone way too far, that has jumped the shark and then some, well, then you end up with stuff like this, with people who are overly sensitive and who want to strip the flavor and the imagery away from words. Are we supposed to live in a world and describe the world in these very bland, gray, dreary terms? All because some random rando may get offended? And again, I'm all for being mindful of what you say, depending on who you're talking to, depending on the context and content and nuance of the situation you're in. But the objection to these terms and then these more neutral alternatives completely just takes all of that out. And I'm sorry, but with all due respect to the university system, I'm not willing to talk this way. I'm not willing to do it. I'll be mindful. I'll certainly, of course, if I'm talking to my boss, be much more professional than maybe I am, talking to a colleague after work or whatever. But uh, I'm not if I say something like I'm talking to someone at lunch, let's say, right? And I go, man, did you see that game? That Steph Curry shot was killer. They just killed it. Game's over. Da! Right? And then some person passing by happens to get offended. That is their problem, not mine. That is their issue, not mine. I cannot live in a world where we constantly have to be on eggshells about what we say. And for crying out loud, I work in compliance. If someone had issues, they would actually come to my office about it. And even I'm like, y'all are taking this too damn far. But anyway, that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day and night wherever you are. Bye.